I'm working on it. Let me read a few before we hit them. Everything's potentially a drug to collective thinking. I know that periodically, almost with some sort of regularity, there's something mentioned about drugs, but it normally has to do with the extrinsically produced or consumed drugs, other than the brain, which are the cheap kinds. Well, there are those that you can buy them, and then you can suffer over the withdrawal, that is, get drunk, have a hangover, feel bad, get arrested, and go, boy, I'll never do that again, which is why they're more popular than such things as trying to think originally and fire up your brain in places that will produce drugs, the likes of which you're not familiar with. When that does seem to happen accidentally, people go, Jesus, I'm losing my mind, I'll go have a drink. Think about it. The point is, it's only the ordinary, it's only collective people, the civilized, who worry about drugs, as well they should. It's just us talking, we're not talking to them. They should be against drugs, and if wherever you live, if they want to propose prohibition on drinking and drugs, some of you don't have too far to drive over in another county to get some beer, hell, sign the petition. You should be in favor of it. Who wants a bunch of drunks, not speaking for yourself, staggering around and pissing in your yard? That's what it's your yard for. So you should be in favor of no drugs, except for this. Everything's potentially a drug to collective thinking. That is part of what institutions do, from religion to politics to every human institution. Part of it is to provide that which operates as a kind of compensation for man individually not thinking. And part of it is not just a compensation. I guess I could let it have gone at that. It sounded as though it was some literary, metaphorical something or other. But they actually provide, which is why people get addicted. I know they don't like the word, but people get addicted. No, what do they call it? Converted, won over to such things as religion. Because they don't feel good. I've got to go to church. My Lord and Savior, Buddha or Jesus Christ or whoever it is, the gods are dealing with my soul. They're addicted. It is a very low-level drug, but everything that the institutions do, in a sense, are providing what amounts to potential drugs. And if you take a liking to the institution, it is no longer in the potential stage. It has been activated. It is producing a kind of apparently externally available drug as opposed to a package store. You've now found a temple, a church, a political cause. At any rate, let's press on. The collective like to go periodically on crusades and rampages. Think about that. It keeps their mind off stuff. Keeps them from having to think. For all of you that, if there were all of you out there ordinary people that worry about what's the world coming to, why can't man do away with wars and conflict, and why do people continue to pee in one another's yard? Just act in a just grossly uncivilized manner. I'll read one more time, then we've got to press on. The collective likes to periodically go on crusades and rampages. It helps keeps their mind off things. You know what things? It keeps them from having to realize, geez, I got no idea what the hell's going on. I don't know what I'm doing. The whole world may be out of control. I know I am. Whatever it is ordinary people think. I'm upset. I'm depressed. The child in me is kicking the hell out of my spleen. The 12-step recovery program is now wanting to charge me by the step. There is safety in a herd, because in a herd you do not have to be original. As opposed to physical house sitters, don't let anyone not going anywhere watch your mind for you. I'm still trying to press on to one I want to get to, but I cannot resist. A physical house sitter. Let's take the reasonable approach right quick, the obvious literal one. Physical house sitter has got to be there. The implication, without any doubt, being that you're about to leave the premises, probably leave town. And so you're going to hire someone, arrange for someone to physically watch your house, a house sitter. It is self-evident within that they have to be there or they can't watch it, right? Right. So you're going out of town, you got to find somebody to stay there. I reread it. As opposed to physical house sitters, Don't let anyone not going anywhere watch your mind for you. What do people do institutionally? What do people do when they go seek advice? When they take up with a religion? When they take up with any sort of philosophy? What are they doing? You understand? You're hiring somebody as crooked as you are to guard your house. You're employing someone as stupid as you are to hang around the house and try to raise your IQ. Make up your own metaphors, but you understand, as opposed to if you're going to get somebody to physically watch your property, your house, you want somebody that's going to be there. But contraire, do-si-do, vis-a-vis, back-to-back, Baton Rouge, it's got nothing to do with it, I just wanted to say Baton Rouge. Don't let anyone not going anywhere watch your mind for you. But notice, institutions, as we were pointing out last time, that is one of the responsibilities of institutions. It is one of the observable bedrock foundations of institutions, is that they appear to be stable, that they appear to cross over generational lines. They last longer than a lifetime. That is, they're not going anywhere. Who would want to go up to a church if you decided, I need someone to help watch my mind? Of course, ordinary people might say my soul, my spirit, my destiny. And maybe your gardener or someone says, well, you ever tried religion? You go, well, not really, but by God, I guess now's as good a time as any. And the guy says, well, there's a church. I noticed, I come over here to do your grass, I noticed there's a church down the street. So you go down there, and it's already got, there's nobody there, and there's a sign, A to Z Realty Company, commercial potential. Or if it said, call such and such number to find out our new address. The point is, you would have no faith in any institution if it did not seem as though it were not what? Going anywhere. That is part of their claim to fame. That would be one of it if you were trying to look for assurance from a university that you had your choice to go to Harvard of the South, let's say, that there's one over here, and then there's one like Fred Goldfarb's School of Law and Culinary Arts. Night classes available. Just assuming you were an ordinary person, which one just on the surface would you have more faith in? Which one would you assume had been there longer? And if you, for whatever reason, weren't quite insightful enough to be able to answer that yourself, and you went and asked them, would you give me your sales pitch? Would you not agree that the university, Harvard University of the South, or whatever it was, Mississippi State College, Nevada State, that they would point out, well, it's good you came here. And you say, well, what we recommend you? One of the first things an institution will say is, well, we have been in business. Did you notice our charter? We were chartered, state charter, in 1875. Of course, the Christian church will say, we've been in business 2,000 years. Nothing counts like experience. We're not going anywhere. We're here today, we'll be here tomorrow, and we'll all be blah, blah. Why would you turn your mind over to somebody that's not going anywhere? Why would you turn over your fate, your destiny? But notice, it's not right or wrong. To all ordinary views, that's exactly what you want. Because they say, yes, we are the ship of stability, a rock of stability, in a tossing sea of uncertainty. Come stand by us. Lash yourself to our mast. And it sounds just right. You think, well, by God, it is. I feel kind of at loose ends. I'm uncertain. I'm nervous. I'm upset. That's why I came to see you guys. If you try to call up an institution and you got an answering service, they say, well, we're out of town indefinitely. Check back. No, that's not what you're looking for. And yet think about it again. If you're going to turn over your destiny, your fate, your mind, why would you turn it over to somebody that they insist that that's their sales pitch, that we might as well be a carved totem. We're crammed into the sand very deeply. We're down past the bedrock, 2,000 years. Look at it spatially, temporally. They say, yes, here we are. Count on us. We are not changing. And at the ordinary level, that's just right. Unless you think about it from a curious view. Why would you turn your mind over to somebody that's not going anywhere? There are several tonight of what we've mentioned before about a point-blank wall, but here's one that's almost makes you want to say, what could be more point-blank than this? I don't think they brought it out, but there's another one about the point-blank wall again that somebody had written down, according to the news story, and asked about. They said that they were somewhat puzzled that they couldn't understand why we talked about a point-blank wall in what seemed to be positive tones, and then what they were equating or comparing was then the numerous items that have to do with the simple and the complex. And the person was asking, I think I can explain it since I made it up anyway, like this, that the person's asking, a point-blank wall to them, they were trying to equate kind of with the simplistic. Like a point-blank wall, from one view, is just, there's nothing there. And yet, the viewer says, that we seem to be saying that the simplistic should be improved in some way, that the complex would be better than the simple. And in that case, how does that fit in with a point-blank wall? And the news item said something to the effect that had all fit that the complex is what you became mentally when you took the simplistic, which is where everyone starts, and you willfully enrich it. Willfully enrich it. In some way you do it, not institutionally, not collectively, that would be what the complex was as opposed to the simplistic, a willful personal enrichment of it. Then, back to the point-blank wall to finish it out, then the answer to the viewer was, a point-blank wall is then what you see when you get in that condition. That was the end of it, and if you were ordinary and you followed into that in a sequential, rhetorical manner, it's worse than a merry-go-round. It's a merry-go-round that's, shoot its own ass up. That you can say, well, that just makes no sense. I beg to differ with you. Think about it. And this, I was going to suggest, might be an example almost of an ultimate point-blank wall. One man's theory, temporarily, is this, that once you learn how to really think, which you could say is once you have enriched your own simplistic mind, once you have become more complex, not partisan, not converted, not won over, just more complex, really think, as we've been calling it for a while. Once you learn to really think, a red bird is just the same as a blue bird, except it's red. May I ask you, what in Zeus's name could be more point blank than that? And we could stay here and I could take the view of an ordinary person saying, well, that is another prime example, some kind of non sequitur that you're trying to pass off as God knows what. I assume some sort of wisdom or intelligence. Yeah. What would a point-blank wall be? How about the man who looked at his reflection in some chrome? Yeah, I know you didn't want to go into that. But what would a point-blank wall be? That you could look, and I can change this, but surely you can do it by yourself. A Chevrolet is the same thing as a Ford, except it's a Chevrolet. A Catholic is the same as a Protestant, except, well, they're Catholic. But an Italian's the same as a Sicilian. I don't want to get into that. An attorney is the same thing as a person with integrity. No, I know. Just a joke. It is not. It's not some supermarket version of Zen. It is not an attempted non sequitur, passing itself off as, I don't know what a non sequitur can pass itself off as. But think about it. A red bird, according to this guy, a red bird is just the same as a blue bird, except it's red. That's got no, even though the sentence, they still diagram sentences. The son of a bitch could be diagrammed. It could be, it will fly. You might say, well, it means nothing. It's silly. But think about it. What if it is not silly? What if it's not a non sequitur? What if it is a primo example of the point-blank wall? If it were, do you understand, there's another hint as why ordinary people cannot look at things that way. And we could, if we were crude and had nothing better to do, we could debate, well, life doesn't want people to see that. They're too dumb to see it. They're too frightened. You can say anything you wanted to. But how about this? What if everybody had the ability, whatever we mean by really think? What if everybody on this planet is more or less sane, and their brains are by and large in their head, and not too many running out their nose or ears? They're just kind of middle class. I know it's one of the best reactions I've heard from this studio once a long time was one where the old man asked a kid, when you grow up, what do you want to be, middle class or deformed? Now, I'm not going into it, but even I couldn't help but notice that that certainly got a reaction. What if everybody could do whatever it is, which all the way from what I've been calling trying to think to what all religions, mysticisms, political reform groups, all of life is one thing when you get down to it again. I've pulled this on you before, but plagiarizing yourself doesn't count. Oh, no? No. All of human life, everything that people attempt to do is, in fact, an attempt to be original. Everything from attempting to be a Christian, to be a Jew, to become more conscious, to transcend normal intellectual limitations, to be a scientist, to discover, to be the one final your name in the possessive case before the gut, before the grand unified theory. Everything that people are attempting to paint, the unpaintable painting, to find the lost chord. The one that people accept, not the one that people go, Jesus, will you stop that? See, that's the difference between originality and art and being artistic, which was another news item that I noticed got almost no response. There is a difference. What if everyone could do whatever it is that, and we're just one in a long list of people in groups and guys just hanging out together. Of all the strange things that men have thought, the kinds of quests that they've been on, trying to do things, meditation, drugs, prayer, hard work, fame, it's all, I could bring it down to it and you would have to, it will float. It's all an attempt to be original. But what if everyone had the capacity? What if everyone can actually hear it when it's said in a certain way? Well, yeah, that's true. To say, well, to be able to think nonpartisanly. What if everybody on the planet that's just fairly sane, middle class, can go, yeah, I know what you mean, yeah. They got no need to. There's no profit in it. It goes nowhere, serves no purpose. What if they know that that news item is not silly, it is not illogical? What if they can hear it? A red bird is just the same as a blue bird, except it's red. Rather than me staying here and even playing both parts and defending it against me playing the part of an attacker saying, well, that's ridiculous, that means nothing. What if I'm just blowing smoke in your ear? Well, it's worse because you're having to furnish the ear or you're putting up with it. And you think, that's true, people can't hear it. What if all of them can hear it? And you're the only ones that are going, well, that's right, people can't hear that because that's a little too deep. That's too obscure, oblique, metaphysical, transcendental, weird. What if it's not? What if everybody in the world can hear, yeah, a red bird's the same thing as a blue bird except it's red. They can hear it. So what? What are they going to do with it? What purpose does it serve? None. That's why men do not, or why men's minds are not automatically still simple. That's why man was driven from that great silent garden and made to speak. But what if he has the ability, when you say, you may tell you what the truth, what the secret of life, everybody's out there searching for it, and people say, middle class people, not people with their hiking boots and on their way to find a guru in Tibet, but just ordinary people. And you say this whole thing about there being some great adventure, some great journey, some great crusade, some great search we should all be on. Yeah, I've heard about it. What if you say, what? All it is to just regain for a minute the simplicity of mind to realize that the red bird's the same thing as a blue bird except it's red. And people go, well, I know that. What are they going to do with it? And it's only people hanging around the lower numbers in the Dewey Decimal System, hanging around the library. It's only them that think, oh, this is heavy, this is deep, this is far too strenuous and occult secretive to ever be grasped by ordinary minds. And what if that's not true? What if any ordinary mind, just for a second, you just give them a little tap and say, this whole thing about the secret of life and everybody, yeah. All it is to find out the red bird's the same thing as a blue bird except it's red. And they go, yeah. Well, I got to go. Was that it? Yeah. Okay. Nice idea. Nice. I never thought about it that way. Okay, I got to go. I got a date. Got to get home. Got to get to work. Yeah, but that sure would take the fun out. Hey, what do you want from me? I'm just trying to run a news show, all right? Do note, all the stuff about the collective, ordinary intelligence, and etc. in herds, this one didn't seem to... may not be a red bird, but this is a blue bird wearing a red bird getup. The collective, it says, do note. This was toward the end after much had been said about herds and the collective. Do note the collective does have talents. Each day as they graze and move about, cows trample out in the dust. They trample out reasonable, decent representations of the Mona Lisa, the Sistine Chapel, several of Mozart's string quartets, and other miscellaneous artistic triumphs. That happens in life. Now you could take that metaphor, if not symbolism, and I guess I'm going to play the ordinary part again and say, boy, that's really stretching. To say, what you're saying is that out in ordinary life, people, perhaps no talent, no originality, that people accidentally, the cows out in the herd just moving around every day, that they just kind of accidentally reproduce, give a reasonable representation of real works of art. Yeah. But how about this? Also, in there, the tacit statement is also, that's how the originals got created. Bunch of cows accidentally. For those of you, somebody stole my material, this idea, whoever it was, I think it was psychology or odds makers, mathematicians, 20 or 30 years ago, the idea that if you put enough monkeys, chimpanzees, with enough typewriters in a room and left them there long enough, they would accidentally finally write all of Shakespeare's works. That's the story. Which that's one of those things that come out of the ordinary that... how can you refute it? Who's going to live long enough? And it can mathematically, I guess, be at least proven enough, for a cow to go, well, all right, Jesus, leave me alone. I believe it. But rather than taking that literally and mathematically, do you realize that each day that which passes for being artistic, that which passes for being originality of thought in all forms, is a continual form of plagiarism. And it's not all done willfully. When I keep using plagiarism, I don't mean that everyone sits down and thinks, let's see, who will I steal from today? What witticism will I come up with at the cocktail hour after work today that no one has read, and that you're out searching for strange, obscure, out-of-print books so that you can listen. It's not that. It's humanity collectively is each day plagiarizing itself. That it is cows doing, in a sense, unwittingly. They don't even notice they're doing it. They continually produce in the dust, just as they trample about, eating, grazing, doing that which humans must do each day. And it's like they trample out little things, and if you look down, you go, oh my God, if you look just right where those three cows just moved, get out of the way. Right there, doesn't that look like the Mona Lisa if you turn your head like that? Doesn't that look like the floor plan for the Cathedral at Notre Dame? And you go, well, yeah, it does. That's everyday life. That's what passes for. Some sort of originality, creativity, civilization on the move. Now, since we have 2 minutes, what was one I was going to do? An enemy of man is an enemy of change, and vice versa. Everyone is an enemy of man at the collective level. He can be a peace-loving fellow that's never been arrested. He can be a nice middle class, stay-at-homer, and everybody is an enemy of man in some way. If he's civilized, all you've got to do is say, well, what do you think about the political situation as it is now in our country, where have you lived? And he may go, well, I don't really care. Well, boy, I bet you really hate the royalists trying to get back in power. And he may go, I don't care. Well, I bet you really disapprove of those who have Republican tendencies, or Republic, in this big R. And you go, I don't care. You keep on and on, but you're going to finally get somewhere. You can get to the level of, well, what do you think about the crime increasing in the neighborhood? If he's alive, if he's ordinary, if his mind works, he is, to some degree, the news item, as all the good ones, is very short, pithy, to the point. That's why they drag me out here to elaborate sometimes. An enemy of man is an enemy of change. If you just heard that, you could certainly argue, well, some people are not enemy of man. Everybody's an enemy of man. In the sense that in a three-dimensional world run by binary laws of physics and forces, then if you're alive, you're an enemy of somebody. Even if you said, well, I have only one philosophy in life. I've tried to be a hermit. I don't like people. I stay away. My philosophy of life is live and let live. If I got to get down and, where's Captain Irony? Bring the son of a bitch out. Then that guy is an enemy of man, because you're going to say, well, how about this? Your name's been selected and you've won 2 free weeks at a motel where they're having a convention of people, of the Society for the Suppression of Those who believe in live and let live. And he'd go, well, Jesus, if that don't bake my cake, the one group of people I couldn't abide in life, because did I get it too obscure? His philosophy is live and let live. I don't give a damn about politics, religion, crap on all that stuff. I read enough history when I was a kid, and I see that that's been the downfall of man. Are we still rolling at all?
Yes.
Okay. And so, you understand we're just making this up since Captain Irony and Princess Paradox. We're not going to deal with them, but we got to point out. He could say, well, you picked out the one group of people that, how did you do that? I believe in live and let live, but he's an enemy of what? People who say, no, live and let live. That was a downfall of Rome. Plus, Cleveland don't look too good based on that same kind of crowd. Just not as many people up there. In opposition to the other half. Or else we wouldn't be here. Society would not be going on. Humans couldn't think, literally. The mind would not work. And back to the physical level, as all of you should put together, regardless of me making the caveat or the exemption I was talking of intellectually, physically, hormonally, half of humanity is in opposition to the other half. If the world's divided up hormonally, to speak metaphorically, into leopards and wildebeest. And of course, half the time wildebeest, don't ask me how it works, but you know it does. Half the time wildebeest can turn around and eat leopards. So it has to be that way, or the world would not go on. There would not be a physical food chain. There would not be a physical diner. That is, the world would not exist physically. Intellectually, it's the same way. So everybody at that level, they got no choice. You're an enemy of man. The elaboration being, you're an enemy of some men. And you don't have to physically get and fight, because we have now left again the physical level. We're talking about intellectually. You can sit there alone. You could be a hermit. Maybe you get a satellite TV wherever you are, a newspaper, or just your memory. But let's say that you do get a little radio and you listen to what's going on. And in your mind, you may have taken a vow of silence. Maybe you accidentally coughed your tongue when you were whittling a new doorstop. I don't know. You could have had very poor motor skills. I don't know. And so you can't even talk to yourself. All you got to do is you listen to the news and you hear what the president's latest program is back in the United States. Or you hear that now the French have finally thrown out the socialists and bring in white ring politics. And you listen to all this, and in your mind, you oppose half of it. Like, Jesus. And what a bunch of idiots. Boy, am I glad I'm out here. You're an enemy of man. Back to the news item. The direct, without the elaboration. An enemy of man is an enemy of change. Is that not what all opposition is? Forget how well founded. Is that not what all criticism of life is? You can start off at the obvious crude level, and it does not seem to be so, but it is exactly what it is. Anything you oppose is opposition to change. Of course, when you're ordinary, you got the brain of a bad toe blister, you would say yes, in part, but I only oppose change that is non-beneficial. I hate to go any further because then you could really get all snotty and say, by whose definition? Of course, then they could get doubly snotty and say, wait a minute, you're trying to make me say that I oppose change that I don't like. What, I look like an idiot? We won't go into that. Many people are far too sly to fall into that, especially those middle class, sane people that run the world, or conversely, or the world is run on them, but because they can go, I don't oppose change that's non-beneficial. You're trying to get me, you're trying to make me say, I decided that I didn't like it, that I had some vested interest. No, my friend, I'm telling you what, it says right here, in Genesis 7:16, it says right here in Buddha's 14th basket, 17th verse, right here, God said, don't start fooling around with people you're not married to. That's the kind of change I oppose. And don't blame it on me. I didn't say it. God said it. The Democratic Party said it. My mama said it. You understand? You're relieved. If you're in a herd, you don't have to think. If you're just part of the collective, you don't have to think. And you can be a part of the International Hermits Union by mail. You don't have to go to the meetings. You're against change. You will not take the responsibility, since you can't, but you can't even see it if you're ordinary. If you say, well, all men are enemies of humanity. And all men who are enemies of humanity are enemies of one thing, and that's change. Again, we're above the physical level. If somebody comes up on the street, a stranger, and hits you in the nose, he should be your enemy, if you got any sense. You know? Hit him back. He's your enemy. We're not talking about that. Intellectually, people will say, well, I'm against other people, certain people, but for very good reason. And whatever they say is not true. It's true, but it's crude. It's not point blank. What they're against is change. They're supposed to be half the time. And no one can see it. Oh, what if they can? What if what I proposed to you before is, what if ordinary people can hear that and go, well, yeah, that's true. But so what? If they stayed in a condition intellectually that if they could hear that and went, yeah, that's true, and they stayed there, suddenly got frozen there, I mean, geez, they would make Lot's wife look like, giving you mean to peripatetic. She looked like a traveling road show. The person would just be hypnotized. That'd be it. They could never move. There'd be nothing to drive them anymore. So intellectually, what everyone opposes, the Democrats oppose Republicans, the pro-choicers oppose the pro-lifers, the hot people oppose the wet people, the cold people. I know all that. But it's based on one thing. They oppose change. Half the time, half the people oppose change. But that is way too point blank. I mean, it's just meaningless. And so you got to say, well, why do you oppose so-and-so? I'll tell you why. I'm glad you asked me. As soon as they do that, you know you're in for it. Well, hell, what did you do? You ask them. God, you must have been bored. Well, all right. I just want to make one more comment here. From our department it's obviously quite obvious, was this reminder. Human originality, that is what we're talking about. Originality is one thing. It's the originality of thinking. That's all there is. There was another little item. Talking about somebody lied to you. I said I was going to stop. They point out that it's only neurally that originality has any validity, that the currency has any gold backing behind it, has any sanity, because if you try and be original hormonally, physically. We've been through this before, but keep it in mind, you're suicidal. Superficially, it doesn't matter whether you lose weight or gain weight particularly. Well, it doesn't matter to me. But to try and hormonally, try and physically be original, such as, I am sick of spending my good hard-earned money at the grocery store. Or maybe it's not the money. You just decide that metaphysically, I am tired of being middle class and routine. Henceforth, I shall no longer eat food. I shall eat air. I will live off used tree bark. You're suicidal. There's no such thing in any profitable manner as originality when it has to do with hormones, the body. So all originality we're talking about neurally. That's all there is. Anything else is suicidal, at the very least. Human originality is originality of thinking. There is none other, was the item. And I was going to point out, when I say there is none other, then what is all forms of fashion to ordinary people? It is the crude imitation. And rather than say crude, if you like it this way, which would imply that people could not come up to the level of originality, and therefore they become fashionable. Other than that, or besides that, what if, back to the proposition that I propositioned you with, that what if they can hear it? What if they hear what originality is? But again, of what benefit is it in the city, amongst ordinary people? If you had your choice, I can be original of thought, or I can be fashionable, and you're ordinary. Which one are you going to choose? You don't even have to say, can I have some additional time to think about it? Refer you to another news item from last time. It pointed out that if you'd like to get some sort of idea of about where humanity is on the intellectual road to progress, was to take note of the fact that when someone dies in their obituaries, they list how many children they had, their marital status, where they went to school, the kind of business successes they had, all the awards and achievements that they gained in life. But one thing they never note is what the man thought. They didn't even enter into it. I mean, the sentence makes sense. But go to the news, do it to yourself, play the newspaper, but go to the newspaper and say, how come you never put what the dead man thought? What kind of thinking he had? It has no currency, it has no value. Not put in those kind of crude, perhaps I should say direct terms. So what if it's not simply that ordinary minds are too crude, too dumb to try and, or want to think originally, that they'd prefer to be fashionable. They'd prefer to be in a herd, safe, which at the hormonal level everyone should be. Even if you were intellectually original, if you're living in the city, you shouldn't walk around, wearing hubcaps on your head and dressing in used tree bark. Of course, it would come in handy if that's what you're eating. You could eat your clothes. In other words, you should be relatively fashionable in the city, wherever you are. When in Rome, live like the Sicilians do. I told you I'm not getting into that. It's a little Mediterranean humor for all you little Mediterraneans. What if they can hear it, ordinary minds? If you didn't lose your place, that they could hear exactly what this news item was saying. That originality is one thing. It's intellectual originality. And anything else is an imitation. Everything else is the herd just being fashionable, the individual cows. And somebody heard that. What if everybody can hear it? And they go, well, yeah, you're right. But then they could think of their own obituary while they yet live. And now I'm using it metaphorically. What good will it do me if I start devoting my time, assuming I could do it, and I hear what it is, if I start devoting my time to being original of thinking to myself, at the expense of, or instead of, being fashionable. Instead of staying with the herd, running at the right tempo, wearing the right kind of skin this year, putting my horn, shifting around the right direction, liking the right kind of bovine music this year, just ordinary, not being a fanatic, but just getting along, attracting the right kind of heifers or bulls, not upsetting my mother and dad and all my older dead mothers and dads, being fashionable. And you thought, all right, I got my choice. What is it? There is no choice. You might also note, and I'll stop, religions institutionally have been wringing their sacred little hands over this for years and years and years and years and years. Because they want to present the same thing. Life drives institutions to keep holding up this kind of shadow news story about, well, think about it in life. Whatever the religion is, Christianity, Buddhism, just even a humanistic view of trying to live a civilized, upright life in any non-particular clerical or religious sense. They say the religions, institutionally, including humanist political system, they're saying, here's what you're faced with to try and live a better life. But they're speaking from the collective view now, not individually. They're saying, join us or live along to, by and large, parallel to our tenets, if you can't follow them exactly. But the thing is, it's not easy to be a Christian, to be a Democrat, to be an American, to be an Italian, whatever it is. It's not easy because life will try, and then they use their own terms. If it was religion, Christianity, they'll say, life will try and drag you into a sinful life, into a crude life. So it is indeed a lifelong struggle to stand up for something, to be a humanist, to be a concerned citizen, to be a real Jew or Buddhist, in spite of the fact that all around you are people who do not care. Philistines. And they'll be pulling at you, trying to drag you down. So it's indeed a hard struggle. They keep doing that, they can't help themselves, and it's a real funny thing. That's why I was going to end it funny, curious. Maybe you'll find it even funny, haha, you should. With no aggression. That they keep, life makes them do it. Like a preacher or somebody, and they'll say that, and as soon as they say it, because they're part of the same dance as the herd, their audience, their followers, their cult, whatever it is, the people who hear it, when they hear this, like when it's indeed a hard struggle because you're outnumbered and it's almost impossible, and they showed up and they paid their money, bought the book, joined the church or what it was, and they go, and they hear that, and momentarily they think, well, shit, I'm getting out of here. You know, why would I undertake something like this? The head guy told that. And then about simultaneously he realized what he just said, and he thinks, why do I keep saying that kind of stuff? Because every time I do, people begin to look at their watch or look at the door and think, how can I get my money back? And they can't help themselves. Did you follow connection? It's exactly what I'm talking about, except on a cruder level. Between attempting to be original, which would serve no purpose, gain you nothing with the herd, and being fashionable. That life keeps bringing it up to people in a very crude manner, and the people involved, every time it happens, which goes on constantly, people go, why did we do that? Whoever said it, whoever spoke for the institution, and then the people who heard it went, why did he say that? Why did I hear that? And then they all think, well, let's pretend that didn't happen. You know, because we've got to press on. What else are we going to do? Nothing. Unless they wandered off by themselves and tried to become, a non-herd thinker. Original, which got nothing to do with what the herd thinks. And it's got nothing to do with what the herd doesn't think. Because you're not an enemy of the herd. If you are, you're part of the herd. Right? We all know that. That to be original is not to be wet under dry circumstances or to be cold under hot ones. No, that's fashionable. Even though it sounds as though to say, well, to be original is not to be simply cold under hot conditions. And you can say, wait a minute, that approaches originality. That approaches herd rebellion. Well, that's my desire in life. What I always wanted to do was be a rebellious little calf. A little calf with a mohawk, or whatever it would be. Whatever it would be rebellion now. Hair combed in the middle, I guess.